Hello. I'm from Berlin, Germany, from the Humboldt University, and we are working in the EU-funded project Europeana version 3. And we are actually working on Europeana for now 5 years, and we are trying to implement best practices for accessing content in a multilingual environment for Europeana. Most of you probably seen Antoine's presentation yesterday. So just quickly to recap, Europeana is the multilingual digital library for Europe's cultural heritage content. The website is europeana.eu if you want to check it out. There are 42 million objects in Europeana to be found. It's text, images, video, and sound, and it's coming from museums, libraries, archives, and audiovisual archives. And in total, over 2,300 institutions are contributing content to Europeana, and because of this richness, the content is multilingual, the objects are multilingual, and the describing metadata is multilingual, and there are multilingual users from all over the world. Just to quickly recap on how we are accessing digital cultural heritage. So first of all, there's a user interface the user has to interact with to send his or her query to the system. We have some sort of access system, and this will then retrieve the metadata which is attached to the object. If we are now trying to cross the language barrier, then we already heard about the drop-down menu for languages. Europeana also has this on the user interface level. Then Europeana offers an automatic solution of query translation, and on the metadata level, it enriches the objects with external multilingual data sets. And these two automatic solutions, so query translation and enriching with multilingual data sets, I'm going to talk about today, and how we evaluated them and how they actually perform in this actual settings of the Europeana portal. This is the classical example of we always show when we talk about the multilingual enrichments. So just quickly how it looks in the portal. This would be a digital object as you would see it in the portal. You have a thumbnail and metadata, and you see this is something done by Johannes Vermeer. And you see a little link to DBpedia, which shows that this object is connected to the DBpedia entry Johannes Vermeer. What happens now is that all the different language labels for Johannes Vermeer are pulled into the index, and now we can also search on the different language variances of this creator. So for example, in German, it would be Jan Vermeer. So this object can be now found across all languages. So to give you a quick overview of the number of the enriched objects, their type and vocabularies. So Europeana enriches time periods, and so far over 10 million objects are enriched with it. It enriches concepts, geonames, so locations, and person names. So for the concepts, it would work like this, that we look into DC subject and DC field, and DC type and DC subject. Look for matches, for example, in the gamut thesaurus, which is a multilingual environmental thesaurus, and DBpedia, and just add all the multilingual variances and the broader terms to the objects and the index. As you can see from the numbers, almost half of the objects in Europeana are actually enriched. But what happens if the automatic solution fails? So for Europeana, this is quite bad because all the content is actually curated by humans, most of it. So some librarian was sitting somewhere and actually putting this metadata to the objects. And now if an automatic solution adds wrong metadata, this is really bad. So it will lead to a loss of trust from the providers, but also from the users and the people who want to reuse the data later. Last but not least, it leads to irrelevant search results and bad user experience. So that's why we evaluated the features and we wanted to come up with best practices for multilingual automatic solutions. Just a quick example of how it looks like if an enrichment goes wrong. So here you see a picture from Poland by staff photographer. This is the title of this object, and it's somehow about Poland, right? But it is actually enriched with pollen, a biological term, and obviously both of it has nothing to do with each other. And it even propagates to all these languages Gamete has, because it now adds pollen in all the different languages to this object. So what happens here, the provider actually gave us the right metadata. It gave us pollen in Dutch, which is Poland in English. But it was matched to the Basque word Polen, I don't know how to pronounce it, and obviously the Basque word Polen and the Dutch word Polen are not the same. So after we found similar problems like this in the data, we thought of, oh, we should look what is the impact of these incorrect enrichments. And we looked at it from the angle that there's a relationship between the object and the enrichment, obviously, but there's also a relationship between the query, which retrieves the object, and sometimes the query also retrieves the object because the enrichment is there. And we looked at 100 queries, the most used queries for a given quarter in Europeana, and queried these in the portal, looked at the first result page, which is like 12 objects per query, and analyzed the enrichments which were added to these objects. And here you can see the correct and incorrect enrichments per type, which I was explaining before. So for the geographic locations, the persons, and the concepts. So if we take the concepts again, then you can see that for 22% of the enrichments which were found, they were actually incorrect. If we take this example again and just look at it from a different view, so I said 22% is incorrect, 78% is correct. If we now look at these two numbers and look how big was the impact, then we kind of get a different impact, a different view on this. So 15% of the incorrects had no impact on enrichment, and 70% had an impact on 7% had an impact on enrichment. That just means that no impact means that the enrichment was not the reason why the object was retrieved. But for the 7%, it was actually the reason why the object was retrieved, meaning the object was totally irrelevant for the query. Similarly, we did the same for the correct ones. So actually, the impact of enrichments was not as high as we would expect when we do enrichments. Nevertheless, if you think of enrichment on a broader scale,